Okay, welcome to Backstage with. This is a forum that's hosted by MeasureMatch. I am James Sandoval, the founder and CEO of MeasureMatch, the professional services marketplace, and I am delighted to have with us Jon Younger, who will introduce himself in just a moment, and a group of independent professionals who are participating in the world of freelance work, independent work, freelance marketplaces. And in this conversation, we're going to tease out some of the things that we're experiencing, we'd like to do better, and basically just trade some ideas so that this independent work experience for all of us improves from each of our own experiences. So Jon, if I could hand over to you to just do a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Sure. Jon Younger. I live in New York City on 2nd Avenue and 72nd Street. I've been interested in the freelance world for a very long time. I've been a freelancer for 35 years, maybe 40. I don't know. It just means I'm old. Thank you, Bobby, for that. I've had some useful experiences in the commercial world. I've taken 2 companies public. 3 other companies were disasters, but 2 ended up working very well. They've both been, I guess they're both continuing to exist, which is not a bad thing. I retired in 2012 and looked around for something to do and realized that learning about what freelancers were doing was a very worthwhile thing. It was just about the time that freelancing was beginning to pop as a significant alternative to a career. I wrote a book called Agile Talent. I started to write for HB, for the Harvard Business Review, and for Forbes and a bunch of other magazines. And came time for COVID and the pandemic, and it became very clear that freelancers were in some cases doing very well and in other cases terribly. And it seemed like a time for all hands on deck. Mm-hmm. So what I've been doing for the last 3 months, in addition to my writing, is just giving webinars like this all around the world. I spent some time in Paris earlier this morning. I was in Ireland last week. I was in Belgium the week before. I'll be in Russia late this week, et cetera, all just talking about what's happening in the world that we share, which is the freelance revolution, and hoping that it's helpful information to people who are eager to try or eager to stick it out.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Jon. Really appreciate it. Your writing is extraordinarily valuable, and so I can tell you that we very much appreciate it. Please keep doing that. So let's go down to you. So I'm going to circle back to Jon with the first of a couple of questions, which he has in front of him, but I'll read it out here. So tell us about a couple of trends that you're seeing in the development and adoption of talent and professional services marketplaces or independent work, maybe more broadly speaking. What are some of the big opportunities or challenges from your perspective that are bubbling up in the various conversations you're having all over the world?
Sure. Unmute for a minute, everybody. Just unmute. Lindsay, Jarrell. I can't see everybody, and I'm terrified to press any of the buttons because I've already lost the landing page and I don't know what to do.
No worries.
But I think I can see it. So here's what I want you to do. When I count to 3, tell me how many independent freelance companies are operating today. 1, 2, 3. Just call a number from 1 to infinity. 1, 2, 3. Call it.
10 million.
80 million.
12
3
million.
million.
No. Seriously, come on.
In the world?
Yeah, in the world. In the world. In the world.
Where?
Okay, a billion.
No. I mean, seriously, though, there's about 800.
Yeah, a
Think
billion.
about that for a minute.
800.
800 different freelance marketplaces operating.
Marketplaces.
Marketplaces.
Independent. No. I'm not talking about
100 marketplaces. Okay, that sounds
right.
a lot.
The argument is about 160 million people are either full-time or part-time freelancing. So what does that turn into as you start to think about it? What are the opportunities? What are the trends? First is it's global. So you're gonna find I talk to half a dozen platforms a week. This morning I talked to Paris. Yesterday I talked to Vietnam. The day before that I talked to Russia. The day before that, it is happening everywhere.
Wow.
COVID is an accelerant, but it's only an accelerant. It didn't change things. It just made them move faster. And so we're looking at somewhere of around 800, creating one a week, 2 a week, somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
Because at this point, about 57 million Americans are either full-time or part-time freelancing. In the UK, 35% of the workforce is either full-time or part-time freelancing. In Asia, about 30% full-time or part-time, which is extraordinary if you think about it. So part of what's happened, which is amazing in my perspective, in my point of view, is that the technology, the SaaS technology, has made it possible for the barriers to entry to drop all the way down. It's easy to start a freelance platform. And as a result of that, we're seeing a proliferation of freelancing that is extraordinary in its diversity.
Okay.
How many of you in England have gotten a massage or taken a yoga class from Urban.co, which is run by Jack Tang? And the answer, well done. 650,000 massages were done between the UK and France last year by Jack's organization. 4,000 freelancers, they were busy. We're seeing an extraordinary range of different kinds of freelance platforms. One of the things that Soraya said was, gee, I wonder if I fit in. I'm a part-time COO, and the answer is we're seeing dozens of platforms either providing interim management professionals, or we're seeing a combination of independent management consulting with interim management, with expert networks, etc. So you're seeing an amazing proliferation, accelerated by COVID, but not created by COVID, that's allowing an enormous number of people around the world to do 3 or 4 very important things. The first is they're able to do it their way. So part of what we're experiencing is folks creating their work and their workplace and their work style. Second thing that we're seeing is that geography is getting blown up. NS.work is a platform that offers South African tech people to the Netherlands and to the EU. Why is that a good thing? 40% reduction in the cost versus EU techies, but the people in South Africa are making 25% more than they've ever made before. So we're able to now blow up the restrictions to success for a family or an individual because the technology is making us a global profession. Now, the consequence of that is that you're also competing with everybody in the world. So we have opportunities all over the world, but we're competing with everyone all over the world, which means one thing very importantly, and that is whatever it is you do, whatever you're freelancing, you've got to do it at a very high level or you will not succeed long term. You may absolutely grab a client here or there, but if you're trying to build a business, you've got to do 5 things for your freelancers, and we'll come to that a little bit later. But very important that your freelancers are expecting 5 specific things from you guys.
So
that's
I'd like
kind of where it's going. Sorry.
I'd like to, if you don't mind, segue from that, then we'll circle back to you in a second. To ask each of our panelists, how many marketplace platforms are you currently trying out or participating in? Out of curiosity, and feel free to pass.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, James. I currently participate in 3. I'm probably more aggressive with maintaining my presence and profile on MeasureMatch due to your focus. I think specialization, we're probably going to talk a little about this, but I think specialization is very important for your clients as well as my clients. So being that you're specialized in an industry, in an area that I think I can provide a lot of value to, I spend more time with your platform.
Cool. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Jarrell. Now, by the way, I did not tee that up, so to be clear. Anyone else want to throw in, number of platforms? No need to name names.
Yeah, so I have like accounts with about 10 platforms.
Whoa.
But yeah, those are just the accounts. I created over the last 7 years, but I think that I'm active only on like 3 of them.
Okay, 3 seems to be the magic number, generally or universally speaking. Do you imagine that number will grow, given what Jon has shared with us, that there are just so many new entrants, so many new platforms that are coming onto the market?
Yeah, I mean, when I created an account with you guys at MeasureMatch, I also created like somewhere around the same time, I created an account with another similar freelance platform. But I think that, like Jarrell said, your focus is much better for us than that other platform. So I'm kind of like inactive now on the other one, and I haven't had any, communication with them for so long. But with you, I'm attending this, call, and we have been in touch very regularly. So I think that's the key difference. So there might be like a lot of marketplaces that would come up, but if they don't have the kind of focus that is required to, engage those freelancers, I don't think they're going to work. So yeah, that's what I think. And I think that over a period of time, I get a lot of clients through word of mouth as well. So that works really well.
So
yeah,
I
just wanted to jump and say the same. I think I'm with 3 platforms, but I can only remember the names of 2, and one of them is MeasureMatch. And as someone that has used MeasureMatch as a client and as a freelancer, I think that the difference is that you can actually feel and see and experience the intention and the care behind the service provided. So your recommendations every time that a project is posted are very significant for me if I were to contract through MeasureMatch. It's got much more intent and genuine feeling. I know it's vague to quantify that, but it's much more reassuring, which, when I am a candidate on your platform, I feel confident that if you feel that I am right for that client as well, you're going to be championing me from the inside. So that's for me.
True. The power of focus. I think that seems to be a pretty important theme. Bobby or Soraya?
Yeah, sure. I can say that I am on lots of different platforms. I've done work for one other platform, and that was in 2016. And I just found I was spending a lot of time making my pitches. And one difference that I've noticed with those platforms and MeasureMatch is that just my experience on MeasureMatch has been very engaging with you, James, and Emma. And it seems like it's more of a focused marketplace, obviously, with measurement. And with that, it seems that on both sides, the client and the freelancers, it seems they're more vetted. And it seems less less wild and just a sort of better kept house on MeasureMatch than the other platforms. So I'm on LinkedIn as well, as probably all of us are.
We all are, for sure.
And I get a lot of requests from recruiters because I very rarely take up a full-time employment role. Recruiters for the last 15 years have been great. And lately they've just been coming to me because, you know, my LinkedIn profile is SEO'd. I'm in every database. You know, I've done that sort of work. But yeah, that's my experience with the platforms.
Cool. That's great. Anyone else want to chime in? Soraya?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about this. I think I'm on about 5 different platforms. And I would say the similarities between all 5 is definitely that, you know, they present the opportunities to you. You can take a look at them, you know, make a decision, etc. But what I think stands out about MeasureMatch, and I think what will continue to differentiate, you know, different freelance platforms is understanding the client side and understanding the freelancer side. And I think, you know, to Jon's point, there's so many of these right now, and some of them have popped up recently because of COVID. But I think your organization in particular definitely seems to understand more of the type of work that we offer and more of the type of work that companies are looking for. So really kind of making sure that there's an alignment and a connection there.
Yeah, that alignment is so important. Clearly,
yeah,
you don't want to step into a time waster of a moment,
right?
That could potentially drag for a very long moment, and clients don't want that either. So you know, we're trying really hard. We know we've got a lot of work to do still, but I appreciate that you see that we're making that attempt. That's very much appreciated. What I'd like to do is circle back to Jon now, and you know, really this feeds off of the back of what everyone has said, I think, which is the second question, and that is, what are you seeing or hearing from folks regarding what marketplaces are getting wrong? Or the flip side is, what could they be doing better? And maybe that feeds into your 5 points.
Yes.
Love to get your perspective.
Sure. And let me jump in at a slightly different place, and that is the biggest challenge facing the folks that are managing freelance platforms, James, like you, and those of you that are building your own platforms or plan to be. The challenge is that only 5 to 10% of opportunities come through the landing page. And so think about the implications of that. And forgive me if I put you guys on, if I ask a difficult question, which is, of the 3 or 5 sites that you're part of, do you bring work to the site, or do you just take work from the site? What we know in general is that the asymmetry in freelancing is that I want to eat at your table, but I don't want to share what I've got on mine.
That's true.
That's a problem. And the consequence of that problem is that we haven't figured out a way to move beyond the hub and spokes of 5 to 10%. Implication of that is that there's a lot more opportunity that we're missing because Bobby doesn't know whether to trust Soraya, and Soraya doesn't know whether to trust Malik, and therefore bring them into something that would be larger than what they individually own. So big point for the future is we're seeing fewer and fewer new platforms working on a sort of a traditional SaaS hub and spokes methodology, much more focus on bringing in on a community of communities, if I may put it that way. The reason why you want a community of communities, the reason why you want more meetups, the reason why you want to build relationships among the folks on the platform is because that leads to trust, trust leads to collaboration, collaboration leads to economic prosperity for everybody. The problem that we've got in some of these larger sites is that only 4 to 5, maybe 10% of people get any work at all. That's why you're in multiple sites, because many of you aren't getting work through those other sites. And why aren't you getting work through those other sites? Well, in part it's because you're not putting anything into the kitty. How do we create a marketplace that is truly mutual as opposed to exploitative in a real sense, where too often platforms think of their talent as inventory rather than real people. There are 5 things that platforms need to get right. First, they need to give you work. Second, they need to provide a continuing flow of opportunity so that you believe that there's a reason to invest in this platform. So as you're seeing these opportunities come to you, are they sufficient? Are they large enough? Are they in your strike zone, et cetera, et cetera? Third, freelancers want help in managing the parts of their business that they don't like doing, like getting paid, like figuring out their profile, like doing something more interesting than a CV in the way that they describe themselves. Fourth, it's really important that freelancers feel as though their platform provides them with future-proofing of their skills and on-trend information about what's happening and what makes them in demand or not. At the end of the day, you guys want the platform to be able to highlight areas that you ought to be thinking about, focusing on, learning about, or becoming expert in. Last but not least, people want to be part of a platform that feels like the term that somebody used, and I don't remember who it was they feel engaged, they feel valued, they feel a part of something and feel as though they're helping to build something. When that happens, when those 5 things happen, you don't need to belong to more than one platform. And when those 5 things don't happen, it doesn't matter how many platforms you belong to. At the end of the day, they're not giving you what you want. So we've got a real challenge here on a global basis of creating more sophisticated, more mature, and more client as well as customer-centric platforms where you're the client, the talent is the client.
Absolutely. You know, that's a really good point. And this is not new, but our approach to, you know, attempting to create value across, in our case, there were 3 customer sets, and we call them customers. So the service providers, we generally call, you know, freelancers or agencies, consultancy, systems integrators as service providers. They're an important customer. We need to figure out how to keep them extraordinarily happy. Not just simply provide a flow of revenue opportunities. Clearly, that's really important. But, you know, how to showcase skills, relationships, maybe technology vendor relationships, other partner relationships, whatever it takes to make that first impression with a new prospective customer really sing. And that's hard. That's really hard, especially because it's effectively a page. But thankfully, technology is evolving incredibly, you know, fast, and there's video and other elements that can help make someone shine or an organization really shine when presenting, you know, a pitch essentially for a piece of work. So that's really important. And then of course the others are very much customers, those that are spending money. And then of course we have a customer set that's actually technology vendors. Pretty important for us, strategically important for us, partly because they feed both supply and demand for our marketplace, and it's really their contribution to demand. So basically them introducing their customers into MeasureMatch for services is what, you know, Soraya, Jarrell, and others can pursue and hopefully lock into valuable contracts. Yeah. All of that is extraordinarily hard, but it comes down to one starting point, which is that everyone is an important customer from our perspective.
Nice. I'd be very interested, and let me just jump in and ask the question. If you had to pick one of those 5 areas, remember the 5 areas: work, a flow of opportunity, future work, help managing the business fundamentals, getting paid, stuff like that, future proofing your skill set and understanding what's on trend and what's in demand and what's happening, And last, feeling a part of something, feeling a sense of community, feeling a sense of engagement with one another, building trust with one another that would allow you to do more work collaboratively. If you were to think about those 5, not MeasureMatch, but the other platforms you're on.
Sure, please.
What's one area for each of you that you'd like to see them improve in? So Malik, what are of the 5 in the other areas that the other platforms you're participating with? What's the area where you see them not showing up as well as you'd like them?
I think most of them are lacking all 5.
It's interesting.
But,
it's interesting.
but I'd say, being part of the community is very important. So I'm like a partner of one of the technology vendors that MeasureMatch has. And we have a community there. And it's like really engaging community. And I'm always there on Slack talking to them. And, we are solving problems together. We are sharing stuff. So it really feels like, there's something, you're enjoying and you're getting engaged, and it develops like kind of like a personal relationship with those vendors, Yeah. So that's very important according to me. And the other thing I would say is that there is also like future proofing is very important. So none of the platforms I see are doing that actually. So that's very interesting for me to hear that from you. And I've never thought about that in this direction. Because I definitely feel like marketplaces can do so much to help freelancers in that regard.
Yes, absolutely.
Out of curiosity, what are some of those future proofing efforts or things?
Sure.
Do you think? Because I'm curious.
Sure. People win projects for their technical skills, and they lose relationships because of their interpersonal skills. So let's start there, right? So, and I like the Soraya smile. So part of it is, are you providing the educational tools that people can find helpful? That's one. Second, there are so many ways to begin to enter an organization if you have skills to do that. One way to do that, of course, is to be an intern for a period of time, like Soraya, you've decided. Another way to do that, is to offer to teach within the organization. And as you're thinking about your skills, Bobby, it sounded like you have some very specific skills in terms of presenting an organization. Well, that's not just a website. It's also a narrative. It's also storytelling. You can't be a good designer without being a good storyteller. Have you had the opportunity to provide that to some of your clients in addition to your technical stuff?
Oh, yeah, it's almost.
See what I mean? I mean, it's just really, it's broadening it out. So you're starting to think about the fullness of who you are and the ways in which you can contribute to your clients and the ways in which the platform can help you to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's aligned with a number of our plans that are long term. So let's skip down to Lindsay. Hear from you regarding the 5 points that Jon made. Is there anything specific that you'd like to see done differently in your experience with platforms?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because in terms of the different kind of marketplaces, I was just looking at ones that I sort of tried to work with, I suppose, and I haven't really gone down that road for a while, and I was thinking about the reasons why. But I think in terms of these other marketplaces, probably the biggest problem with those were that second one of continuing flow of work, I would say, is probably the first factor. But then when I think of where the places have changed, I suppose, or morphed into sort of different versions of those marketplaces. So probably a bit like Malik, like working with vendor partners, software partners, and and that very much is about the community that you kind of get involved with, and that community kind of leads onto work. So I think community is probably the most important factor out of those. But then I feel like, you know, ultimately that commercial of ongoing work is going to help power that community as well. That's really important. But yeah, so that would be, yes, the second point I think is really important. And yeah, that community is a really key part of it as well. Yeah.
May I jump in for just 1 second and just reinforce something that Lindsay just said, which I think is so important. If you're not building community, if you're not building trust, if you're not building the potential for collaboration, you're cutting yourself off from 90% of the work. I mean, it's just math, right? So you may get your share of what comes through the landing pages, but the consequence of your share of what comes through the landing pages at Upwork is less than 4% of the folks make any money at all. At Patreon, fewer than 5% make even minimum wage. At Fiverr, I mean, et cetera, et cetera. So until we do a better job of creating community, as all of you have said in one way or another, we're not going to get the benefit of the opportunities that each of us have that could be available to others of us, because we won't have built the trust, we won't have built the relationship. You can only expect MeasureMatch to do so much coming through the landing page. The rest has to come from people to people.
Yeah, no, that's important. It's something we've not done yet, which is to open up a community in the platform. So for service providers to, you know, collaborate, yet it's on our roadmap to do that. We're just approaching it, you know, kind of carefully to make sure we do that well. I'm conscious of the time. I think we're down to probably our last 10 minutes or so, and I think we've covered some really good ground. You know, I have a bunch of questions I could probably refer to, or I can, you know, maybe leave it to anyone in the panel to throw out a question if you like. The one that Soraya had at the top here, I liked quite a lot, and I'll lead with that. So the question is, do you think that the independent workforce will continue to be as appealing to businesses post-COVID-19, post the pandemic? And if so, what types of businesses will continue to thrive in hiring independent consultants versus full-time employees?
Hey, James. Yep. James, very quickly, I wanted to jump back to the question we were just discussing.
Go for it.
I'll be very brief.
Cool.
So John, your requirements, your 5 requirements, really gave me context to how to evaluate a marketplace. You know, I didn't really have context for evaluating the marketplace other than where they aligned with where I feel my customers are. Now I have context, and that context is power. And I was using that context to James to kind of you know, get a better grasp of where I feel like MeasureMatch is succeeding, because I do feel like MeasureMatch is more aligned with my potential customer base than others. And I feel that way, but it's not necessarily quantified yet. Here's the reason why. And I want to throw this out to you, James, because I think this is a great work that you all are doing.
Cool.
John, I'm distinguishing between your first 2 points. Your first point was to give you work. Your second point was the continuum flow of opportunity. I look at the flow of opportunity as being people who are submitting stuff to the marketplace to be bidded on. Yeah, that's just the marketplace having volume come through. Giving you work is you actually winning the opportunity to work with one of those engagements. So that's I'm distinguishing there.
Yes.
Here's what I feel MeasureMatch is doing that should lead to a better experience from the potential clients, and definitely a better experience from me. Your verified vendor program, I think, is a differentiator. Here's the reason why. If someone is coming in looking for a Power BI developer and they're on some other platform, that other platform has no way of adding legitimacy to the fact that we do beautiful, powerful, effective, scalable Power BI solutions. There is nothing to verify there other than my word. You know, and eventually you're gonna get client feedback, but that takes a while. If there is a verification program, that immediately adds legitimacy to you being able to do what you say you can do. That helps the client in evaluating the people who are submitting proposals. It helps me, and I'm going to spend more time on that platform because I know the clients. Not only am I pre-vetted, the clients are able to pre-vet me and therefore connect more directly with people who can actually solve their problem. I think that's I think that's great. I think it's great, and I just wanted to call it out.
Cool. That's great. That is our aim, is to try to add that extra layer of value. So I appreciate that. That's a lot of extra context, and I don't get to hear many people articulate that. So I really appreciate that, Jarrell. That's much appreciated. So cool. Thank you. Back to the question that I had floated about post-COVID. Do we think that the demand for independent workers, freelancers, small to mid-sized boutique consultancies will continue to be strong post the pandemic?
I'm happy to jump in for just a minute if you'd like me to, but others may have something to say.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Would others like to comment, or shall I start? Why don't I start?
Go for it.
I'll follow you, John.
Yeah, I'll start. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that it will continue to grow for the following reason.
Okay.
If you think about what freelancing gives, first of all, freelancing has been normalized by COVID in the sense that the difference between a remote employee and a freelancer ain't much. So having normalized it, what are the implications? Well, 91% in 2017, 91% of companies that we surveyed through a survey with TopTal, which is a very extensive survey, said they're using freelancers. 76% said they're going to increase their use. That was in 2017. What we know is that freelancing provides organizations with the potential for something that they just don't have otherwise, and that is the ability to access folks that may not be local, that may be out of their price range, that may not be interested in their nameplate, but are interested in the work. And so we're seeing the creation of flexible blended workforces that are not going to be stopped. The challenge is, when will procurement stop leading, and when will HR get in the game so that we're really starting to think about workforce design on a more sustainable long-term basis that includes freelance and full-time people, rather than thinking about freelancers in our traditional on-demand, as little as possible, keep them arm's length, second-class citizens kind of stuff. We are moving in the direction of freelancing as a legitimate, valid profession. We're not folks any longer that are in between jobs, or in my case, 35 years in between jobs, so I guess that's a long time. The implication of that is that we are going to see the shift that has occurred for the last 10 years accelerate rather than slow down. Not only
can I ask you, John, I don't know if you are aware of IR35 and the changes that the UK government was trying to implement, and whether...
The answer is yes. And it's also happening with AB5 in the US, and we're seeing all that stuff in the Nordics. The reality is it's moving. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be changed. There's just too much push on the other side. Even in the Nordics, where historically employers, unions, and governments get together and set salary rates. The reality is that we're seeing massive growth in freelancing, because in addition to those three bodies setting rates, more and more people would rather be freelancers, and more organizations would rather have a mix of full-time and freelancers.